So EA and DICE are definitely not happy with the current leaks coming out of Battlefield Labs. I don't know if anybody saw the footage yesterday, but after I uploaded my video talking about some of the smaller things that we'd seen online, basically somebody leaked a 23-minute full round from the new Capstone map complete with everything that was going on there. It wasn't, bad quality, it wasn't colorized or anything like that to avoid being banned. So this person will have almost certainly been banned now. But that footage is now out in the wild, and DICE and EA have frantically been trying to take it down off of YouTube by DMCAing the videos, which is obviously why I'm not going to show it here in this video. But people have just been re-uploading it all over the place, Reddit, X, YouTube. It's kind of a losing battle for DICE and EA, and they are really not very happy about it. So much so that I have heard on the grapevine that they may be considering just not inviting any new players to the tests, or maybe even canning them altogether. So let's have a little discussion about this. Is there any truth to these rumors? And is this actually a good idea for DICE and EA to do that? As always, guys, if you enjoy the content on the channel, make sure you're subbed up. There's going to be a lot more to come on Battlefield going into the future. Going to do my best to cover every bit of news for you guys. And of course, hopefully eventually get to play the game ourselves. So as always, thank you guys so much for the support. So let's take a little look at the timeline of the leaks and how this has been going on. So the very first Battlefield Labs test, a bunch of people leaked it instantaneously, like literally the second the playtest began, somebody started streaming it over on Twitch. Now, it's fair to say that these leaks turned out pretty favorably for EA. People have responded to what they've seen in those leaks of Battlefield 6 in a pretty positive light, and I think it's been good marketing for EA. And even some have speculated, including myself, that they may have even intended this or maybe even leaked these things themselves. But David Serlin did take to Twitter after that very first playtest, and he said they are not happy with the leaks, they don't condone the leaking. He kind of made light of it a little bit and didn't seem too serious about it, but he said, like, yes guys, please don't leak, you are under NDA and it's not cool. Move on to the second playtest then, and of course a bunch of people from the first playtest who leaked got banned. They thought they had done a good job covering up their watermarks with various memes, and of course there were a bunch of hidden watermarks, and all those people got banned. And so next time around, people basically degraded the quality of their leak footage and did some really intense colorization, really to the point that there was no point even watching the leak because it was just that bad quality. And so it sort of seemed like people really got the message, and if you wanted to leak, you're going to have to jump through some hoops to do it. Now, as the various mechanics and features that they're actually testing in Battlefield Labs have become apparent, specifically the Battlefield subreddit community have really been responding in, I would say, a pretty negative way overall. So whenever there is anything that people don't like, whether it be SBMM, the lack of a server browser, movement that people deem to be too much, people have kind of been like overreacting about these pieces of information which we don't really know anything about at all and are still under testing conditions. And DICE and EA now feel like they're starting to have to put out fires amongst the community, so much so that the community manager, Total FPS, a couple of weeks ago, he made a lengthy post over on Reddit saying, guys, you need to chill out because we're testing the game, nothing here is final, and all of this stuff is supposed to be under NDA anyway, you're not even supposed to know about it. And I think he has a point here. That being said though, there are probably some things in there that aren't going to change, pre-alpha or not, such as the lack of a server browser, so I can understand people being a bit miffed about that. But when it comes to skill-based matchmaking, we don't really know anything there. Is it going to be used for team balancing? Is it going to be used in other more egregious ways? We just simply don't know. But David Serlin, the game's director, has come out and assured us that it is very mild and it's basically mostly just used for team balancing. So I think that's kind of like something that people have definitely gotten a bit of an ant in their pants about too much. Now, this being the Battlefield community, we're pretty tight-knit. I hear things. I know a bunch of people who are in the tests, and of course I'm not going to name any names here or who has told me these things, or even be able to assure you guys that there is any truth to them. But not in Friday's test, the one before that, I heard that apparently DICE were so unhappy with the leaks that they were threatening to cancel Battlefield Labs altogether. Now, I don't really think there is that much truth to it, or perhaps the narrative has been changed as it's been sort of, like Chinese whispers gone from one person to another, because cancelling Labs altogether just wouldn't make any sense. considering how much money, time, and resources DICE and EA have poured into this initiative. Like, why would they do that? They've set up testing teams around this. To have to cancel those teams and basically re-implement them into other parts of the project would just be a massive waste of time, right? But after yesterday's leak, the 23-minute leak that I'm sure many of you watching this video have already seen, rumor has it that DICE have decided to just not invite any new players to the playtest. So I think there are definitely some thousands of players right now in the testing Discord who are actively participating in the tests and leaving helpful feedback. And so DICE are probably thinking to themselves, if we just weed out the leakers and ban them, but don't invite any new players, eventually we will end up with like a core team of testers who aren't going to leak anything and are going to give us useful feedback. So in that regard, it kind of makes sense. But on the other hand, it kind of sucks that these leakers have ruined it for everybody else who is still hoping to get invited. Now again, I don't know if this is 100% true or not, maybe it's something that DICE was simply considering, but I've heard that this is something that they've said in that internal Discord. So maybe this is a temporary thing, maybe they just said we're not going to invite any new players for the next playtest, and whenever they feel like they need a new influx of testers, or they want to basically test their servers and stuff like that, and they need more players for it, perhaps then they will begin to invite people again. So 2 points I really want to make about this. First of all, I don't think it's gotten by anyone that every time a leaked piece of footage comes out like this, the player is literally having a spasm on their controller or their keyboard. It is abundantly clear that they have no idea what they're doing, and this is almost certainly the first time they have ever played a Battlefield game. And that is what is going to happen if you invite people who just don't care about their testing position. Now, I'm not saying that they don't need people from all walks of life. Of course, they need console players, they need PC players, they need players who are so-called Battlefield veterans, they need players who have never played Battlefield, they need skilled players, they need unskilled players, they need to test the game amongst the entire population, or a good enough horizontal slice of that population that proportionally represents them. But the reason that all of these leaks are coming out of people who are so bad at the game and clearly don't care about their participation, because they know if they leak this without trying to make any effort whatsoever to cover those watermarks, that they are going to be banned, is because they simply don't care about that participation, right? They've just signed up for this test, they've been selected, they're like, oh, what's this game? Battlefield Labs. Oh, I guess I'll take part in this. And then they see online that everybody's like really interested to know about it, and they're like, oh, I guess I'll just like post my 20 minutes of gameplay to YouTube, and if I get banned, what the hell, I don't really care about the game at all anyway. All I'm saying is, like, why don't you invite literally anybody else who actually cares about their participation, who is going to leave you solid feedback, and isn't going to leak anything? Because people who care about being in those tests and would literally give like their right bollock to get in those tests, they're not going to leak anything because they want to partake in all of the subsequent tests. You know, for example, let's just pull a name out of thin air here. Why don't you invite somebody like, I don't know, maybe me, or maybe Silk, or maybe Heeb, or somebody who actually knows about like air vehicles, since you're testing air vehicles in the new map, or anybody else from my community or the Battlefield community who is interested in Battlefield and really wants to get in, instead of these terrible players who just do not care about the franchise. And there's almost certainly three kinds of playtester in there, right? You know you're going to have like the person who plays the test, and they know why they're there. They're there to test the game, and they're there to give feedback, and they're going to give solid, constructive feedback. Then you're probably going to get people who try to give feedback, but it's rather vague and unhelpful. And then you're going to have the third person who is just there to have fun, right? They're just there because they want to hop on and play Battlefield for a couple of hours and then just sign off and not actually leave any feedback. And playtesters should actually remember that the reason they're there is not really necessarily just to have fun. It's also to give feedback on the game and really improve it for the sake of the entire community. For every single person who isn't able to test, myself included, these players have an obligation to improve the game for everybody. And obviously these people who are leaking aren't doing that. Now the funny thing is, if this turns out to be true, that they aren't going to invite any more players, this is not going to stop the leaks or the data mining, because there's always going to be people who will go to great lengths to protect their identities and leak in a sneaky way, as I kind of covered in my video yesterday. And the data mining, like, all somebody needs is the game files. So as long as the data miners know one person who has the Battlefield Labs build, they can send it to them completely anonymously. Like, there's no way that DICE.EA can detect that they've sent over those files. And even if the data miner cannot access the game on their EA account, they're still going to be able to look at those files and data mine everything from them. So this is not going to change anything really regardless. The only thing I think it's going to stop are some of these larger gameplay leaks where people blatantly don't care about getting their accounts banned and they just kind of say, screw it, let's just put all the gameplay up on YouTube. I don't know, dude. It just pisses me off, honestly. Like, when I hear this kind of stuff and I'm like, yo, like, there's so many willing playtesters ready and sat here who are blatantly not going to leak anything and are going to give you constructive feedback, and you're just not inviting them. And that's fine. I'm not, like, expecting for people like that to be invited necessarily if there are limited spots. But when you see these idiots who are invited instead of those valuable people, it just makes my blood boil, man. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, guys. I know it's a bit of a ranty one, but these things need to be said sometimes. Hopefully there is less truth to it than I think, and they are going to invite new players, because if not, then, well, the leakers have basically screwed the rest of us over. So, GG's.